Hey everyone, I'm Crystal Jigrup, and this is Empowered by Women. In August of 2021, I launched Book of Bijou, which is a line of chic and innovative jewelry storage. And in January of 2022, we expanded into what you now see as the Empowered by Women platform. I really wanted to create a centralized space where we can really put emphasis on our mission of women empowerment and community over competition. It really truly does fill my cup to be surrounded by so many of you inspiring women, and the energy that you bring to me and our platform on a daily basis is unmatched. You really all do fuel me with so much motivation to continue doing what I'm doing, and for that, I thank you. Before we jump into the episode, please be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you are listening, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. And also don't forget to share your favorite episodes with your fellow female founders so that we can continue growing our platform and furthering our mission. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this next interview with another incredible woman in entrepreneurship that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. Today, we have the amazing Adrienne Dyer. She is a nonfiction book coach and ghostwriter with a proven method for helping entrepreneurs write business books that set them on a fast track to reaching their goals. From sales coaches, real estate professionals, and healing practitioners to the CEO of a $100 million marketing company, Adrienne has helped entrepreneurs and thought leaders write and publish books that hit bestseller lists and earn 5-star reviews on Amazon. And it really is her mission to lift up women entrepreneurs into the limelight by using the power of their story, which I love. I am all about giving women that platform and recognizing the power of their voice and the power of storytelling. So I'm so excited for this conversation. Adrienne, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and thanks for the lovely intro.
Absolutely. So first of all, where are you joining us from?
So I am actually on the west coast of Canada. I'm on Vancouver Island, and it's just kind of a hop, skip, and a jump from Seattle. And it's just really beautiful here. I'm kind of looking out my window of my office over a marina. So we can see the ocean over there. And it's really quite like a picturesque little town that I live in. Yeah, so it's lovely.
Beautiful. That sounds like the perfect little place to set the mood for writing.
Yeah, it is. It's totally like a little writer's getaway kind of a town. So I'm very lucky to live here. It's very quaint. It's kind of a retirement community, so it's pokey and slow paced, which I love. So it suits me just perfectly.
Amazing. I love it. So, well, I mean, it sounds very peaceful. So I'm going to have to figure out a time to come visit you
Yes, that would be
and try
amazing.
to write there. But let's dive into your story. Tell us about, everything that you've done in the past. What does your background look like and how that led you to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I pretty much always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was a little kid, I used to spend hours down in my room. I remember my parents asking me one time, sort of pulling me aside and asking, are you okay? You spend a lot of time alone in your room. And I'm like, I'm just writing stories. So I would take my tea down into my room and write all these, cheesy teenager romance adventures. Um, so I pretty much just always wanted to be a writer. And when I graduated from university, I got an English degree, and I started to work for magazines when my first daughter was born. And I thought, I'm not going to see if I can go, avoid going back to my corporate job and make a living finally as a writer, which I'd always wanted to do. So I started writing for magazines, which was really exciting to, see my name in print for the first time. And I kind of learned really early on. I was actually writing advertorials for a local business magazine. And I would just do sort of profile stories about local little businesses and massage therapists. And one was a Chinese doctor, one was a woman who owned a healing practitioner store. And I was supposed to just write a story about them and kind of like highlight the products they wanted to sell or whatever services that they wanted to highlight. And these were very much supposed to be designed to, sell the service. But I didn't know anything about selling or marketing or anything like that. So I just kind of went with my gut instinct, wrote the good story, wrote the people story, and just had fun with it. And a few months in, one of the owners of one of the shops that I wrote about phoned up the editor and said that she only wanted me to write her ads from now on because every time a story came out, her sales went up. And I just thought, Wow, like that was just a complete, I never saw that coming. That was the first time I'd ever had an inkling that my words or my writing ability could help somebody's business grow. And so that could just kind of ignited my whole passion, which has stayed with me through my whole career. It's almost 20 years later now. And I'm still doing the same thing, which is writing people's stories, which truly fascinate me. And I'm just drawn to people anyway. And I love finding out what makes them special and getting really to the heart of what their purpose is and their soul driven mission and who they serve and all of those things. And really finding ways to capture that in the written word. And so that's taken me from website copy to marketing strategy, brand identity building. And now I've kind of channeled everything into nonfiction books. And so that's just kind of, to me, it's like writing a great big long article, about I get to dive into the whole thing. And if I'm ghostwriting, I will write the story for them. And otherwise, I coach them through the process of writing their own books. And these are really books designed to grow the business. And so we look at, what type of a book would be the best. We sort of strategize how to capture everything that they're doing, their legacy of knowledge, all of those things into a book that would really propel them towards whatever their goals are. And sometimes that's a memoir, sometimes it's a business kind of playbook. There's lots of different types of ways to kind of tackle it. Sometimes it's just an ebook or even becomes the framework for a course or something like that. But that's kind of what I'm really have honed in on now these days. I still do some website copywriting and things like that because I just love it. But that's sort of how all of that came to be. And yeah, very lucky to be doing what I love.
I love your story, and I really love the emphasis on how powerful storytelling is, because by you sharing someone else's story, they were able to maximize their sales, right? Which is incredible. So I am curious, for people that are kind of still trying to hone in on how to share their own story, like, do you have like particular questions that you always ask the people that you're working with to really get to the magic of what their story is?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, it's so hard for us to see things in ourselves sometimes. And so really what I do is, in the beginning, whether it's a website client or a book client, I just start out with asking them to tell me their story, just like you did. And then from there, that's where I can just I can see right away what makes them so special. And so I start with their story, how, and really focusing on how did you come here? Like, how did you get into this work? And why do you love what you do so much? And then, who do you serve and who is that kind of the person that lights your soul on fire when you get to help them? And so just through them sharing all of those things about themselves. And sometimes, when they're busy talking to me about these things and we have this conversation, they discover things about themselves that they didn't really realize were there. It's kind of, especially when we're writing a book together, it's a bit of a self-discovery journey. There's all kinds of things that come up, and it's really about, we kind of start with honing in on what is their purpose. And so they might think, I want to write a book because I want to grow my business. But then, when we start working together, we start with, like I said, tell me your story. And then it's really getting into um, what is your purpose? What's the purpose for writing the book? But what is your purpose for the work that you're doing? And then what is it that you want to do with your story? If you fast forward 5 years from now, what does your life look like professionally, personally, financially, because you wrote your story? And that really gets them to start thinking about, first of all, driving home their mission for writing the book in the first place, or whatever it is that they're trying to write. But then also really hones in on what their passion is and their real sort of soul purpose calling. So we kind of, and then, I get to know them more and more over the course of being together, but it just have that ability to really hone in super quickly on, what is at the heart of what they love to do. So yeah.
My follow-up question is, if so they could just answer those questions, right? But then there's a
Yeah.
difference between answering those questions and it comes out kind of like flat and monotonous, and like there's no energy, there's no life behind it. So what is the difference between just answering those questions, giving you what you need, and really being able to make the story connect with the person that's reading it.
I think that, when someone is really doing what they love, and most people don't come to write a book about something that they're kind of meh about. They're usually there, or if they do, if they have an idea, that's what we sort of, I steer them away from that. It's like, let's write the right book for you, for your goals, and for the, and so once they start to talk about their passion, I don't need to, like they just ignite, they light up. And, if I were to ask you to tell me why you love what you do, you would light up and you would probably just start spilling out, all of your passion, your hopes, your dreams, your mission, your values, all those things would just start spilling out because you love what you're doing so much. And so that just kind of happens naturally. And then, if I'm ghostwriting the book, we go through this whole exploration process and I help them develop the outline, but then I'm interviewing them through the book. And so they're literally speaking the book to me. So we have a Zoom call just like this. I'll ask them questions about the chapter and the things that we decided to talk about in each chapter. And they just tell me what they want to go in the book. And then I take those exact words and just make them look beautiful, translate their spoken word into something that is presentable in a book that's very professional and polished. But that's how I capture their essence and their voices, because it literally is them talking to me. But yeah, in terms of, even just coaching them through the process of writing a book, if you're not super connected to the message you're sharing, it will fall flat. It will be hard to write. It's going to be really like a long, difficult process, because writing a book is a huge project. And so that's why I spend that time in the beginning, the first couple of calls, is really just honing in on that soul. It's almost like a bit of life coaching or business coaching, or just making sure that they're super connected to that soul purpose and then connecting that purpose into the book. And a lot of times they might come with a million ideas and not know which one to start with. And that's how we hone in on that. Sometimes they come with an idea that they think they want to write about. We end up going in a different direction because it's like, no, we're going to write the book that lights you on fire, that makes you feel that way when you're talking about it. And then we're going to just write that out. So it's really the passion in the person and the author that's driving that whole thing. And as long as we're writing the right book, it's going to come through naturally.
I love that. I love that you dove into that, how, people kind of have this vision of like, I think I'm going to write about this because it sounds good. It sounds like that's something people are going to want. And then the more
Yeah.
you like dig deeper into who that person is, that's where you realize, wait, but you're like really, there's something special about the way you talk about this. That's
Yeah.
what we should lean into. And I think that's so powerful to remind people, because I think we so often fall into this mindset that we have to, fit a certain part. We have to look a certain way. We have to play the role or fit in. When
Mm-hmm.
really, like, all those things that like we feel like might be like weird about us or like too unique that no one gets, like that is what's so special. And that's what people want to read, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing, I'm busy writing a book right now about content creation. So I have sort of like a framework for easy ways to create endless story ideas for content. And there's built-in kind of brand identity exploration and stuff like that. But, I always say that when you just be yourself, you eliminate the competition because there's only one you. And so it's all about letting all of that fall away. And sometimes it is a bit of a journey. And sometimes there's, like I am thinking of a client that I worked with recently who she started writing her book and it was great and everything, but she's a therapist and it sounded so clinical and didn't have her in it. And it was only 8,000 words. And she's like, I'm done. And so I just kind of gently kept prodding and prodding, and we just sort of peeling back. Like I could see that there was some sort of block there, something that was restricting her voice. Because I'd seen her blog and I see her show up on social media, and she is just on fire with passion about what she talks about. And it turned out she worked for the military, and she was kind of had it drummed into her over so many years that you have to leave all the emotion out, be super objective, whittle it all down, and say what you want to say, like in an email, as concisely as possible. And so she was showing up like that in her book. And over time, over a couple of months, we just like released it. And then now the book just flooded out of her. And now it's like 45,000 words. All of her thoughts and opinions and dreams and hopes are all in the book, but it took a little bit of really just kind of gently prodding to get that to open up. And so sometimes we do that when we show up professionally online too, because we're like, oh, I have to speak a certain way and I have to use these words. And all of a sudden our personality just gets shoved to the back burner. But there's only one you, there's nobody else, like Dr. Seuss said, there's nobody youer than you.
Okay, I know you're all well invested into this episode so far, but I wanted to just take a quick moment to tell you all about Cast Magic because this tool has been a lifesaver for me and the Empowered by Women podcast. And we don't like to gatekeep around here, okay? So if you also have a podcast, a YouTube channel, or really produce any kind of long form content, you really need to introduce Cast Magic into your life if you haven't already. It used to take me forever to find specific clips, create captions and titles and descriptions, and all the things that come with running a podcast, but Cast Magic has made that 10 times easier for me. And as a mom with a very busy schedule, I am all about simplifying and streamlining my to-do list. So seriously, save yourself some time and even multiply your usable content and download it ASAP. The link will be included in the show notes, but let's go ahead and get back to this awesome interview.
So if you just let yourself just kind of relax into who you are, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff because you will be original, and that originality is going to be intriguing, and that's what's going to draw people in. So really the best way to be interesting is to just be yourself, literally. Yeah, and it's very hard to do that. I mean, and there may always be a little bit of kind of professional polish where we might hold back some of our personal details and not going to, it's not about oversharing, but if you really just relax into using your own voice, who you really are, and you just let that come out, then you will automatically, your passion will come through, your originality, and also you'll attract that ideal person that you most want to work with will just automatically be attracted to that. So yeah, and it takes some practice and it takes some nurturing and help, and it's a self-discovery. Yeah.
I think the relaxation is a good key point that
Yeah.
we often look over because we're putting so much pressure on ourselves, like, oh my gosh, I have to write this book. I have to sit down and write it. But
Yeah.
as you said, if you just allow yourself to get into the state of just like flow and good energy and relaxation, that's where all the like good golden nuggets start coming out because you're just like in the groove, right?
Exactly. And I love using dictation for that because if you and I are having this lovely conversation, but if we were writing back and forth to each other without knowing each other very well, it would sound very different. But as soon as we start to talk in person, then things just flow out. We forget about when we're composing something, our brains are busy, self-editing. That's the other thing is when we're typing, our self-editor kicks in. And so oftentimes the trick is part of the trick to help people loosen up and find their voice and let that out. It's not that they need to find it. They know what it is. It's more a releasing, a freeing. But when you speak parts of your book and you just pick up your phone or talk straight into a Google Doc, when an idea pops in your head, when you're getting out of the shower or out on a walk or whatever, we're just going to talk the way we talk. And then you can take that later on and polish it up and take that dictation and then translate that into your book. And that can be part of your book. I dictate whole chapters. Sometimes I'll get out of the shower, like I said, and I'm hair's dripping wet, and I go into my closet and I stand there and dictate an entire chapter in 15 minutes. And yes, it needs a lot of work to spruce it up and make it, read beautifully, but the idea and the feeling and me, it just flooded out and I wasn't worried about that. So that's one, big trick that I fall on a lot is for helping people and just thinking about, pretend you're having a conversation with your sister or your best friend or whatever. And how would you explain all this to somebody you knew really, really well and felt super comfortable with? And then that's how you speak in your book, because we just need to write the way we talk, essentially.
I think that's such a good tip. And it kind of takes away that layer of like that barrier of for folks that think like, well, I'm not a writer, like I don't write. No, but you might not have written in the past, but you have the content. You have really good, amazing ideas and stories in your head. And by sharing that and sharing it in your voice, like that is is a great way to like get started and push you in the right direction. And then you have assistance from like editors or ghostwriters like yourself.
Yeah,
But that doesn't
exactly.
mean like you can't ever be an author if you're not a writer, right? There's ways to kind of navigate around that.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a singer also, and I went to Ireland a few years ago to sing with a group called Anuna. And they, it was a big deal. It's for me because, they perform worldwide, and it was a summer school and things like that. So there was like all this educational component built in. But the director was saying he loves to work with untrained singers best because they're not restricted, and they don't have all these bad habits or things that they've learned from other people that he then has to kind of like break those down and try to. So and this is when he's hiring people to sing with the group and things like that. He favors untrained singers, and it's kind of the same with writing. I find the people who say, I'm not a writer, I don't know how to write, they make the best authors. And they just come into it, and we figure out a way to make it work for them. I mean, I just helped a woman who she teaches people how to quote unquote train dogs, because it's not about training the dog, it's actually about teaching the humans about how dogs think and behave and feel, and then becoming better companions. But she has dyslexia, and she talked about how when she was in high school, she had so many barriers to learning because she couldn't write and it was difficult to read. She just wrote a 100,000 word book, and this is not something she ever thought would be possible for her. And I coached her. I didn't ghostwrite the book. And I gave her, all the tricks, like, try dictation and these things. And when she unlocked, she just went to town, and she was just like, I can't even believe this. Like, it's not even that I don't consider myself a writer. It's that I literally could not write and I could not read very well. And I just wrote and it wasn't just a short book. It was like a humongous book, and it's well written. It's really well written because she just realized that, well, I can speak, so I can write. So, dyslexia doesn't come into play when she's talking to me and she's explaining all the things in this highly intelligent, very well articulated way. So we just figured out a way to capture that kind of spoken word in writing, and that's really easy to do. So that's my favorite story because when people say to me, well, I'm not a writer or I can't write, then I tell that story because yes, you can.
Yeah. And it's
And
so
that's the
inspiring.
thing. Yeah, there's editors and there's other professionals that can help put a polish on it. Once you get that rough draft, then you can do everything you need to do to get it ready for print. But
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that story. That's such an inspiring story. But speaking of inspiring, I want to dive into your personal story a little bit more actually,
Oh
because you
yeah.
started your business
Yeah.
as a single mom with two
Yeah.
young kids.
Yes.
So the obvious question is how? How did you do it?
It wasn't easy. I started writing when my first daughter was born, and I was still married at the time, but it was very much just, a little bit of extra income because I'd quit my job. And my primary focus was, my ex-husband and I, we wanted to have one of us stay home with the kids. And so, but there, I did that for a while, then we divorced. And so then I was a single mom with an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. Graham was 4 at the time. And so now all of a sudden I needed to kind of either get a job, like a full-time job, or I needed to figure out a way to make money from writing. And so that's when I kept on writing magazine articles, and that's when I really started to dive into the marketing side of things because people were asking me to write websites for them and things like that. And I love to learn. So, but trying to balance that was really difficult. But I did find that, there were so many times where I would just do a job because I would think this entrepreneurship thing is so hard because the income's up and down and I need to pay the bills and I don't know where my mortgage payment's going to come from next month kind of thing. And so I would look for a full-time job, and they just weren't compatible with being a single mom and trying to take care of my kids. Like how would I would need to be in 2 places at once or put them into before and after school care, which I couldn't afford. That would just eat away most of my earnings anyway. So I just kind of thought, come hell or high water, I'm going to make this work. And my kids, actually, I credit them for making it possible because they were so good. They just learned at such a young age and we were living in a house that didn't have an office for me. I just worked with my laptop on my lap out on the couch with them, doing art or whatever they were doing beside me. And at the time I was homeschooling even. So yeah, it was hard, and I could only do part-time hours. It was very part-time, and I just kind of had to work things in as best I could. But my kids were so good about, mommy needs to work, or mommy's going on a call right now, so we have to be really quiet. And when you think about how the day-to-day goes in a job, there isn't a lot of, there's a lot of time where you're off on lunch break or coffee break or chatting with people. And so when you think about the number of hours that you have in a work day and the number of hours that I was spending actually doing the focused work as opposed to fixing lunch for everybody, I figured it was probably about the same anyway, like 3 or 4 hours a day was enough to be able to get what I needed to get done. And yeah, but I'm not going to lie, there have been some very scary moments where, financially, I didn't know how I was going to make it the next month. And I just kept going, and things just, materialized when I needed them to, and I feel so lucky to be able to say that. And now my daughter's 19 and my son is 14. So it's totally different. We live and work together, and they're just so used to that schedule, and the fact that when I have a Zoom call, they help me keep the cats from jumping up and coming in on screen and things like that. But it is tricky. It's hard work. But I definitely think that running your own business can be a lifesaver also for women who are trying to raise a family and make an income, because they don't have the commute and they don't have, all those pressures. You can set your own hours, and you can do what you need to do to get the work done and make the income, but work it around family life. And hopefully, prioritize time for yourself so you don't get too exhausted, as because that is literally what you're doing. You have 3 little ones and a baby, and you're running a business, and you're just on fire. So yeah.
It's tough. It's tough for sure. It's 4 hours on a good day. I'll get in some work.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
you mentioned something that I think is like really like where it gets really sticky, and that is financials of it all, especially as a parent, right? We have no choice but to provide for our children and make sure
Yeah.
they're eating and getting all the things that they need. So I think it's really interesting because you still had such this adamancy of like, I'm gonna make this work, right? We have to make this work, like going to a full-time job, doing all of that, like that's not gonna happen. But like, where is this money coming from? And you said yourself that the money would like end up materializing. So I think there was a portion of it where it's like the energy that you were putting towards your work was working and manifesting those things for you. It was giving all those things that you needed. But what advice do you have for women that are kind of like in that space of they're not yet at that point with their business where they feel financially comfortable, and it's kind of like, I don't know, should I just give that up and go the traditional route, get my 9 to 5 job again, or should I keep at it? Like, what kind of advice can you share?
I think first and foremost, you have to do what you have to do to take care of the bills. And so sometimes that means, okay, I have to take a job because I just have to, but I know that this is temporary. I think the biggest thing for me was this steadfast belief in that everyone is kind of walking around in a bit of a dream, almost like we're just taught that this is the way it is. You grow up, you go to school, you graduate, you get a job, you hopefully can advance and increase your pay that way, and it's 9 to 5 and commutes, and this is what it Monday to Friday work week. But I was like, no, I get to design my own life. And if it's hard and I have to shift gears, or I can't, I'm going to the food bank and I need to temporarily get a job, fine. I will do whatever I need to do to pay the bills and take care of my needs right now. But I'm never going to lose sight of the fact that that can be temporary if I want to. And I get to design my own life, and we don't just have to do, what society tells us or what everyone else is doing. There is a different way. And also, I would say, raise your rates, raise your rates, raise your rates, charge what you're worth. And if you, like, it's really hard to do that when you're in that scarcity of, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. I need this next client. Fine, if you need to take that next client and undercharge a little bit just to make yourself feel safe that you got, but then the next client, up your rates. Like if you're charging $20 an hour, charge 50, then go up to 80, then it's 150. If you're charging $500 a month for your coaching package, what happens if you raise your rates to 1,500, 2,000? And think about, start with how much money do I need to make in a year or like in a week or whatever to pay my bills, multiply that by this. So figure out what your annual income needs to be comfortable. And then just backtrack that and calculate that hourly rate or the package rate or whatever it is that you need to charge, not what everybody else is charging, not what you think that you should charge or what people will pay. Charge what you need to charge to work the hours, calculate, I want to work 4 hours a day. That's all I can do, 4 days a week. And I need to make $85,000 a year. Now figure out what those rates are going to be and charge them. And then it removes kind of that emotional attachment to the, oh, I don't know if I'm worth that much, or I don't know if the client will pay. It's like, no, that's what I have to make in order to make ends meet. I'm going into this conversation. I'm steady on those rates because it has nothing to do with any of that emotional stuff. It's just straight up practicality. And then once you get to the stage where you can kind of make ends meet, up those fees and get to the point where you're comfortable. You're not just making it, you're comfortable. So I think that raising your rates as early as you can and pushing yourself beyond, if it feels a little bit like, I don't know, then that's probably the rates that you need to go there, and just, people will pay, people have the money. It's just a matter of, when you start to charge more too, you elevate, you show up differently. When you really believe these are the rates that I'm worth because of my knowledge, my experience, or whatever it is, you show up differently and you attract clients that are, happy to pay what those rates are. And I think like charging higher rates is probably the best way to get out of that famine sort of state. It's very hard to do that when you're poor and you're like, I've been there for years. I've done that. And when I was in that state, I was charging $25 an hour and I was like, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. $50, my rate went up. And then it was 80 and that felt really uncomfortable. And then it was like, I'm charging $150 an hour and that's time. And then it was like, I'm not charging an hourly rate. I'm charging based on the lifetime value of the service that I provide. What's the lifetime value to the client? So yeah, I think I don't know, I hope that's some good advice, but that's kind of my best advice, I think.
I think that is great advice. And there was a lot of kind of like reframing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think there's also a correlation of like, when you raise your rates, you're kind of raising your vibration also, right?
You
Because
do.
you're not stuck in this mindset of like, oh, that's all that I'm worth. Like nobody's ever going to pay that much for me. But when you're like, you know what, I'm going to do it. These are my rates. I'm standing by it. Then you're elevating your mindset with it.
Yeah.
And then you start attracting all of the right people. So I think that's brilliant advice. And I love that kind of piece of like taking the emotion out of it.
Yeah.
And, not being so, just don't sell yourself short. Okay, people.
Exactly. Especially women, we do that all the time. We undervalue and we under ask.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also, ask people for referrals. Go out and ask, do you know anybody who, or this is what I do. Do you need help with that? And start networking too, like get in, women's business groups and things like that, and go to those events and talk about what you do. And just talk about it all the time, because you can never talk about the thing that you're doing enough. You think you're, over sharing on social media or whatever, talking too much about what it is that you're doing, even in your personal networks, but people only see a small fraction of the things that you post. So you can never talk about it enough, which I have to tell myself that all the time, because it's like, oh, I'm posting about this too much, but no, there's no such thing really as posting too much about something.
I couldn't agree more. It's really, it matters how you're doing it, obviously.
It
But
does.
you have to definitely get out of the mindset of like, oh, I shared that once already. Like people already know that. No, you're constantly getting new audiences. People are constantly missing past content. You have to keep putting yourself out there. And that piece about like networking and putting yourself out there in like the physical space too, or in just like different groups and different communities. We obviously met through Women Thrive.
Yeah.
It's so key. And I think that's also just so helpful for moms and entrepreneurship as
Yeah.
well, because you actually like get to talk to other adults, which is
Yeah.
nice.
And sometimes even leave the house. Imagine that.
Right? Amazing. Like we need that. We need that to keep our juices flowing and to stay motivated and to keep pushing ourselves and to recognize like, yes, this is where you are meant to be. Just
Yeah.
keep on going and everything will materialize, manifest for you as long as you
Yeah.
are coming to it with the right energy, with all of your passion.
Yeah.
Adrienne, you are incredible. I wish we could continue this conversation. There's so much that I would love to keep chatting with you about. So we're just going to have to bring you back on a second time sometime in the future because I feel like you have so much to share.
I
Where
would
can
love that.
everyone connect with you,
Yeah.
work with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, the best way is just check out my website, which is adriennedyer.com, or connect with me on Instagram, Adrienne Dyer Book Coaching. And then we can, just get to know each other. And I do have an email list too that people can sign up for in exchange for a book planning resource that I have. So that's always a good way too, is just to join my community, and then I'm always going to be sharing news and what's happening. But yeah, for sure. If anyone wants to reach out and talk about some of these issues a little more deeply, anytime, because that is another passion of mine now at this stage in my career too, is trying to sort of, reach that hand out and help others up from where I started. So yeah,
I love that. And of course, all of those links will be in the show notes. That book planning resource, key.
yeah,
If you want to write a book for all of our exclusive members, that's already linked and ready for you in our private community. For everyone else, reach out to Adrienne. She would be more than happy to share it. And obviously, I mean, writing a book is just, it can be very overwhelming. The thought of it overwhelms me. So
yeah.
have people in your corner, people like Adrienne. Again, you have been incredible. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your story, sharing your insights. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Crystal. It was lovely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. So lovely to talk to you.
Another incredible interview with yet another inspiring woman in entrepreneurship. I hope you guys loved that episode just as much as I did. But before we leave off, if you yourself are also a woman entrepreneur, I would love for you to consider joining our Empowered by Women directory. We're looking for women-owned product and service-based businesses in the US to help us build the go-to place for our communities to find local women to shop with and connect with, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. All of the details can be found on www.empoweredbywomen.com/apply-directory. Of course, that's going to be linked in the show notes below, and you're also welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions. But other than that, thank you again so much for joining us, and I will see you in the next episode.